The clock ticked backward, but only when she looked away. It began on a Sunday afternoon that felt deliberately empty. The apartment held the quiet like a held breath. No traffic outside, no neighbors moving above or below, only the low electrical hum that came from the walls when everything else stopped. Elise had not turned on the overhead lights. She preferred the grayness of late winter afternoons, the way daylight flattened the room into something manageable. She sat on the couch with her legs tucked beneath her, a mug cooling untouched on the coffee table. Across from her, mounted slightly crooked above the television, the wall clock ticked. She hadn't noticed it at first. The sound had been there for years, a background rhythm she only became aware of when it stopped during power outages. Tick, tick, tick. She stared at it without thinking, eyes unfocused. The second hand moved forward, obedient and precise. When she looked down at her phone, no notifications, no messages, she heard the sound change. Not stop, reverse. Tick, pause, tick. She lifted her head sharply. The clock's second hand was moving forward again. Elise frowned. The sound had been unmistakable, softer somehow, like a footstep retracing itself. She stared harder, as if scrutiny alone could pin the mechanism into honesty. The second hand advanced. The minute hand remained steady. She waited. Her neck began to ache. Her eyes watered. Nothing happened. Feeling foolish, she looked away again. This time deliberately, eyes sliding to the window where dusk pressed its pale face against the glass. Tick, tick. The sound crawled backward through her chest. She turned. The second hand jumped forward mid-motion, as if embarrassed. A chill prickled along her arms. No, she said quietly, to the room, to herself. She stood and crossed the space to the wall, leaning close enough to see the faint dust trapped under the clock's plastic cover. Her reflection hovered there, distorted slightly by the curve. Her face thinner than she remembered, eyes too alert. She looked down. Tick, up again. Forward. Normal. The apartment seemed to tighten around her awareness. The hum in the walls felt louder now, less neutral. Elise stepped back, pulse quickening, and laughed under her breath. She had slept poorly all week. Night shifts at the archive always left her unmoored, waking at odd hours with the sense that she'd missed something important. It was easy for the mind to manufacture patterns when deprived of rest. She turned the clock face down against the wall. The ticking muffled, then ceased. Relief washed through her with surprising force. She didn't turn it back. That night, she dreamed of standing in her childhood kitchen, hands braced against the counter while her mother stood behind her, alive and unremarkable, counting backward under her breath. Elise tried to turn, but the space between them stretched, rubbery and resistant. When she woke, the apartment was too cold. Her phone read 3:12 a.m. The digits felt wrong. Too early or too late, she couldn't tell which. She lay still, listening. From the living room came a faint, familiar sound. Tick, tick. She rose and padded barefoot down the hall. The clock was upright again. She did not remember turning it. Standing in the doorway, she watched the second hand advance. The longer she stared, the more the room seemed to settle, as if relieved by her attention. Shadows behaved. The air warmed slightly. She glanced at the dark television screen. Tick. She spun back. The second hand had moved backward 3 full marks. Her breath stuttered. "I see you," she whispered. The clock obeyed. Over the next few days, Elise tested it the way one tests a bruise, carefully at first, then with growing insistence. She counted seconds aloud while staring, then deliberately turned her back. She recorded videos on her phone, only to find static corrupting the footage at the exact moments she looked away. She angled a mirror so she could watch the clock's reflection while facing the kitchen. The reflection lagged, always just enough to be wrong. She began writing timestamps on sticky notes and placing them beneath the clock. The handwriting shifted subtly between notes, slanted where she knew it should be straight, letters tightened as if penned by a more careful version of herself. Sometimes she found notes she did not remember writing. 3:40, lost 2 minutes. For 12, Sound reversed again. Don't turn around. Her memories began to fray around the edges. She reached for recollections and found substitutes in their place. Conversations that ended differently, days that refused to line up. Once, she was certain she'd called her sister the night before, only to find her call log empty. That absence hollowed her chest. The clock ticked on. She stopped going to work. The archive felt dangerous now, full of unattended corners and clocks she could not control. At home, at least she could watch. She dragged a chair into the living room and positioned it directly beneath the clock, neck craned, eyes burning. She blinked as little as possible, afraid of what might happen in the dark gaps of sight. Her body began to betray her. Her hands trembled. Her vision doubled at the edges. The room wavered when she stood too quickly, like an image struggling to load. The clock behaved perfectly. It was almost kind. On the fourth night, exhausted beyond reason, she nodded off in the chair. She woke with a jolt, heart racing, convinced she'd lost hours. The clock read 1:17 a.m. Her phone read 1:17 a.m. Relief hit her so hard she nearly cried. She stood and the room lurched. The floor felt softer underfoot as though padded. The distance to the kitchen seemed longer than before, stretching with each step. Elise reached out, steadying herself on the wall. Her reflection in the darkened microwave door did not match her posture. It was straighter, younger, watching her with an expression she could not read. She turned away quickly, back to the clock. The second hand was still. Then, with a soft, deliberate sound, it moved backward. A minute passed in reverse. Then another. "No," Elise said, voice hoarse. "Stop." The air cooled. The ticking deepened, slower and heavier, like a heartbeat played in reverse. Memories surged, not relived, but undone. She felt moments loosening inside her, unspooling. The night she hadn't answered the phone, the week she'd avoided the hospital because she couldn't bear the smell of antiseptic and loss. "I didn't mean," her words tangled. "I just wanted." The clock responded. Time slipped. Her apartment brightened subtly, the gray afternoon light returning through the window despite the hour. The mug on the table steamed again. Her phone buzzed with a notification she recognized with sudden, painful clarity. "Mom." Elise staggered forward, reaching. Her hand passed through the clock face as if through water. Cold flooded her arm, then her chest, then everything. The room tilted. Sound folded in on itself. For a moment, an endless, perfect moment, she was nowhere. Then she was standing very still. The apartment looked right again. Quiet, dim. The clock ticked forward. Elise turned, heart hammering, expecting relief. The body that stood before the clock was watching her. Her own face, familiar, older, hollow-eyed, stared out from the glass of the dark television screen, mouth moving soundlessly. Elise tried to speak. Her voice came from the wrong direction. Behind her, from the living room, the clock began to tick backward. And somewhere in the reflection, the other Elise smiled, finally seen. Her childhood drawings were pinned to the walls. She'd never brought them here. Mara noticed them because of the color. The apartment was still half unpacked, its walls an off-white that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. Boxes lined the hallway like silent onlookers. The only decoration she'd put up so far was a single lamp in the living room, casting a dim, amber pool that barely reached the corners. Against that muted backdrop, the drawings were impossible to miss. They were pinned neatly along the living room wall, arranged in a loose grid. Crayon on yellowing paper. Bent corners. The unmistakable pressure of a child's hand pressing too hard, leaving grooves she could see even from across the room. Mara stopped just inside the doorway, keys still in her hand. Her chest tightened, not with fear at first, but recognition. She knew those drawings. A house with a red roof and no windows. Stick figures holding hands, one taller than the other. A sun in the corner with too many rays, its face a lopsided smile. Her drawings. From when she was 6, maybe 7. "That's not possible," she said softly. The apartment answered with silence. No traffic noise. No neighbors. The building had felt strangely empty since she moved in, as if sound didn't like to linger here. She stepped closer. The paper smelled faintly of dust and something older, crayon wax warmed by summers that no longer existed. She reached out and touched one carefully, half expecting it to vanish. Didn't. The pin was real. Cool metal head, pressed cleanly into the drywall. Her mind raced for explanations. She must have packed them without remembering. They'd been in a box from her parents' house, mixed in with documents and old books. Grief did strange things to memory. Everyone said that. Still, unease threaded through her thoughts. She had unpacked every box herself. She remembered choosing what to bring and what to leave behind. She would have remembered these. She would have felt something then, the way she felt now, an ache just below the sternum, sharp and immediate. That night, she dreamed of the drawings. Not as objects, but as places. She walked through crayon houses whose walls bent and bled color. The sky was heavy with waxy clouds. Somewhere nearby, a child was crying. Not loudly, but with the steady, exhausted sound of someone who had been crying for a long time. When she woke, the apartment was colder than it should have been. Her breath fogged faintly in the air. She padded into the living room. The drawings were the same, but not. The colors were richer, pressed deeper into the paper. Lines that had been faint before now stood out with deliberate clarity. In one drawing, the stick figure's hands were no longer touching. A third figure stood nearby, sketched lightly, as if added later. Mara's stomach turned. She checked the calendar on her phone. 2 days since she'd moved in. No visitors. No landlord. No friends who knew her address yet. She took photos of the wall, careful to capture every drawing, every pin. She counted them, 12. The next day there were 13. The new one was smaller, tucked low near the baseboard, like it was trying not to be seen. The paper was newer, less yellowed, but the style was unmistakable. A bedroom. A child's bedroom. Twin beds. One neatly made, one messy. A door half open, darkness spilling in behind it. Mara sat on the floor and pressed her back against the opposite wall. The apartment felt closer now, the ceiling lower than she remembered. The hum of the refrigerator sounded wrong. Slowed, uneven, as if struggling to keep time. She thought of her brother. Elliot had been 3 years younger, inseparable when they were children. They drew together for hours on the living room floor, crayons scattered everywhere. Their parents' voices distant and unimportant. After the accident, the drawings stopped. The memory slid into place with a sickening smoothness. She hadn't packed the drawings because she hadn't kept them. Elliot had. Her phone buzzed, startling her. She fumbled it, nearly dropping it. No notification, just the screen lighting up, reflecting her face back at her. Paler than she expected, eyes rimmed with dark. Behind her reflection, something on the wall seemed to shift. She didn't turn around. Over the following days, the apartment began to echo the drawings. A chair moved slightly from where she'd left it, angled wrong, like a sketch corrected midline. Shadows pooled in corners that didn't match the light source, their outlines jagged, crayon-thick. Once, she found 2 mugs on the kitchen table in the morning. She only owned one. The drawings grew more complex. Figures gained faces. Expressions sharpened. In one, a girl stood alone in a doorway too tall for her body, the frame bending inward. In another, the same girl slept in a bed that looked uncomfortably like Mara's current one. Her mouth open as if mid-breath. She stopped sleeping well. Each night, she felt watched. Not from a single point, but from everywhere at once. From the walls. From the paper. One evening, she noticed something new. A drawing in progress. The paper was blank when she first saw it, pinned at eye level. The next time she passed, faint lines had appeared, guidelines, the ghost of an image waiting to be finished. Her hands shook as she watched. The lines darkened slowly, as if drawn by an invisible hand. Wax scraped softly against paper, the sound barely audible but unmistakable. A figure emerged. An adult woman, thin and tired, standing in the living room. The proportions were wrong, arms too long, head slightly too large, but the resemblance was undeniable. Mara backed away, heart hammering. "Stop!" she whispered. The drawing paused. Then the woman's eyes were filled in. Heavy, dark circles. Familiar grief etched into the crayon lines. The apartment creaked, settling in a way that felt intentional. Memory pressed down on her all at once. The last afternoon she and Elliot drew together. The argument, her leaving the room, the sound that followed. She had never gone back. The final drawing appeared overnight. It was larger than the others, pinned directly across from her bedroom door. It showed a child's bedroom identical to the one in the earlier sketch, but now the beds were gone. In their place was a small figure curled on the floor, crayon lines dense and frantic around it. Standing over the figure was something taller, indistinct, his face unfinished. Mara stared until her eyes burned. A soft sound came from behind her, paper shifting. She turned. Every drawing now showed the same room, the same moment. The tall figure's face was complete. It was hers. Her reflection in the glass of the drawing frame did not move when she did. It stayed bent forward, watching, as if waiting for her to remember how to step back inside the lines. Behind her, the apartment felt less like a place she'd moved into, and more like one she had never left.